Waba, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is part 2 of my final thoughts as I wrap up and Walimu dropping the knowledge in this format. In this concluding episode, I am continuing to share a compilation of the lessons I have tried to communicate to you, our viewers, in 36 MDDK episodes. One of the devastating results of our history being interrupted by ruthless invasions is our disconnection to and with each other globally. Dr. Malana Karanga, founder of the cultural holiday Kwanzaa, explains it this way, and I quote, "No lesson is more important for us to learn from our history and culture than our need to recognize our interrelatedness as a people and part of humanity, and our parallel need to put into wider practice an ethics of sharing which recognizes and builds on this interrelatedness in the most positive and mutually beneficial ways," end quote. As I have reminded you throughout seasons 2 and 3, we are connected to each other as a global people beyond nationality. This is yet another important insight to not only learn, but internalize the lesson of our history. It's a shared history in order to shift our relationships with each other. This is the only way we will take correct and righteous actions in our own behalf. So what are the essential elements of what we must do to heal and restore ourselves as a global people? Once again, I turn to my beloved mentor, Dr. Asa G. Hilliard III. He lists 3 critical characteristics in his seminal book, Seba, Reawakening of the African Mind. 1, a strong ethnic identity and sense of mutual dependence. 2, a global network based on mutual trust. 3, a passion for technological or other knowledge. I will attempt to take this succinct synopsis of what is critically necessary and break it down into actions we must take as individuals that will transform us as a community. Of course, I started our dialogue on this in the last episode with my historical observations entitled The Reference. Another document I have created in my ongoing engagement with thinking about how to address and contribute solutions is called Ubuntu, a global plan for local action. As I am in constant engagement with spiritually and intellectually pondering our situation, the question of how can we use this information gives way to what are the next steps. In the ongoing evolutionary process of liberating our people, Ubuntu, a global plan for local action, is my own thoughts for strategic development based on my study of our history, culture, scholars, and my experiences. While our struggle is a global one, and I take a global Pan-African approach, it is very clear that we must act locally. First, what is Ubuntu? In his book, No Future Without Forgiveness, Reverend Desmond Tutu wrote, and I quote, "Ubuntu speaks of the very essence of being human. You are generous, you are hospitable, you are friendly and caring and compassionate. You share what you have. It is to say, my humanity is caught up and inextricably bound in yours. We belong in a bundle of life. We say a person is a person through other persons. A person with Ubuntu is open and available to others, affirming of others, does not feel threatened that others are able and good, for he or she has a proper self-assurance that comes from knowing that he or she belongs in a greater whole and is diminished when others are humiliated or diminished, when others are tortured or oppressed or treated as if they are less than who they are. End quote. In other words, I am you and you are me. And when we know that, we will change everything. However, please note that we cannot get to Ubuntu without intentionally doing the work of healing ourselves. We all carry hurts. The practice of radical forgiveness, while difficult, is a superpower of strength, freeing us up in energy, mind, spirit, and heart. Sometimes forgiveness begins with the person in the mirror. My Ubuntu document proceeds with a number of essential sections, but for the purposes of our limited time, I will focus on 4 of those sections: literacy, economics, political power, and where do we go from here? A global plan for local action. In discussing literacy, let me quote another one of my mentors, Dr. Haki Mahabudi, and I quote, "One of the great tragedies of modern education is that most people are taught not to think critically. The majority of the world's people, those of the West included, are taught to believe rather than to think. It's much easier to believe than to think. People seldom think seriously about that which we are taught to believe because we are all creatures of imitation and habit." End quote. Without a doubt, our people must know how to read, write, have computer skills, and basic mathematical computation skills. We must know how to think. It must be noted that African people established the first universities and libraries. Books were the most expensive items you could purchase in our ancient classical civilizations. Every Black home should have a library, even if it's only 5 or 6 books on our history. This is especially important for our children. It goes without saying, we must also have self-discipline to stay the course in a society that is laden with distractions. Brother Malcolm X told us, and I quote, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." I will not belabor the point regarding self-knowledge, only to say that the serious responsibility of properly teaching the history of our people is ours alone. Our children, as well as our adults, are bereft of empowering self-knowledge. The evidence of this is multi-layered, including a lack of racial unity, support for our businesses, lack of purpose, and racial pride in our children. The need for us to educate ourselves regarding the lessons of empowerment that emanate from our own history and culture is an important step toward reconnecting ourselves and crosses economic, class, and religious lines. In fact, without this type of engagement, we will not coalesce as a whole people with a common history, a common culture, a common struggle, and a common destiny. In regards to economics, Dr. Claude Anderson writes in his book, Powernomics, and I quote, "Power is the ability to get things done despite resistance and opposition of others. Economics is the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and wealth. Powernomics, then, is the ability of Blacks to pool their resources and power to produce, distribute, and consume in a way that creates goods. End quote. One thing we must do in regard to economics is weaponize our money. Capitalism is crass and inhumane. It is the hand on which the glove of consumerism is worn. We must understand the power of our dollars, spending them within our community and resisting the lure of consumerism by not squandering money with frivolous purchases. Strategic spending of our hard-earned resources is a conscious decision that reflects our cultural values and love of self. We must recognize and understand the power of our dollars to also change our condition. When we withhold our financial resources from companies and institutions that do not respect us, it not only has an impact on their bottom line, it yields change on every level. My shiro, Ida B. Wells Barnett, said it pointedly. The appeal to the white man's pocket has ever been more effectual than all of the appeals ever made to his conscience. Well, regarding entrepreneurship, the need for Black business ownership is obvious. The need for us to support Black businesses is critical to us staying in business. The Kwanzaa principle of Ujima, cooperative economics, speaks to this directly. To build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. The Honorable Marcus Garvey gave us a tangible example of this in his work. In particular, the Negro Factories Corporation, NFC, consisted of a variety of businesses generating income and employing 700 people working in the community in 3 grocery stores, a laundry, and clothing shops. The clothing factories manufactured UNIA uniforms and popular fashion for UNIA fashion shows. NFC also had a doll factory and ran 2 restaurants. What is clearly obvious is if we do not own anything, we cannot control anything. If you don't control anything, you cannot develop your community in its best interests. Ironically, our university-educated professional folks are trained to seek a good job, not start their own business. But I digress. This, too, is something that only we can change. So let me also get personal for a moment. Basic literacy around finance is an important aspect of a plan forward. Having a budget, a savings account, good credit, and living within your means fall into this category. Do you have an emergency fund? A credit card? Do you save regularly? Do you know how much money you spend on non-essentials? These questions are all tools for managing your finances that can assist in self-sufficiency. We need this now more than ever. Additionally, we cannot say we are down with the struggle and never volunteer our time or spend our dollars in Black-owned establishments or financially contribute to programs and projects that depend on the community to exist. Again, the wisdom of Garvey. A race that is solely dependent upon another for economic existence sooner or later dies. As we have in the past been living upon the mercies shown by others and by the chances obtainable, and have suffered therefrom, so in the future we will suffer if an effort is not made now to adjust our own affairs. End quote. While politics has gotten a bad name, political power is essential to getting things done in our own behalf. When it comes to the ballot box, exercising our civic duty as citizens is basic and serious. Sadly, there is no place on the planet where we are perfectly governed. Consequently, the need for us to engage the political system to effect systemic change is not only necessary, but an obligation to our children's children. Our ancestors fought and died for this basic citizenship right, and it is our sacred responsibility to use it for our communal benefit. The same must be said in regards to our rights. Standing up for our right to live as human beings has been a protracted battle waged by our righteous ancestors for centuries. A global struggle from the motherland to the diaspora. It is a fight that we still must wage, and it is as serious as ever. To quote Bob Nestor Marley, get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Where do we go from here? A global plan for local action begins with understanding what we are dealing with. Again, Baba Asa explains, the problem that African people face is not simply the direct inconvenience of oppression, physical containment, and brutality. The problem is one of mental containment, end quote. Mental containment is emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. It affects how we think, even if we dare to think. Not having a sense of ourselves as a people, not knowing our long history, and existing in a state of disconnection is the mental containment that we must break out of, embracing consciousness for ourselves and our children's children. It takes committed effort to live differently, read differently, act differently, spend your money differently, vote differently, and move in the world reflecting your consciousness. You cannot claim to be conscious and live unconsciously. Other steps forward include organizing and mobilization. We must organize and mobilize for our own empowerment beyond protesting. The work is both individual and as a group, but know that this work, only we can do it for ourselves. We must cultivate authentic connections with one another in order to act in our own best interests politically, economically, and in our communities. Small groups working together on a specific challenge is like taking small bites out of a huge elephant. We must work persistently and with passion in order to dismantle the system that serves as the arm of the oppressor. There was work for everybody in this regard. What is the vision forward? I believe the ultimate vision is for all people to live fully as humans in the world. The right to pursue a life of well-being, free of fear, threats, intimidation, or harm. It is a vision that includes the right to meaningful and purposeful work aligned with our skills, talents, and drive. The steps to get to this place is still an ongoing work, a struggle, and we all have a part to play. So ask yourself the following questions. What can I do? This is a primary question for addressing the issues that face us. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. For example, just treating each other with a new level of kindness in speaking, interacting, a smile will forward the cause of healing, unity, and trust. This is part of what I call the inside work for the next level of outside change. What can you commit to doing on a consistent basis? Next, how can I serve? The importance of service was established in antiquity by the pharaohs of Kemet or ancient Egypt. Service was the highest ideal to which one's education, experience, and vision was dedicated. Imhotep was revered because he served the people with his knowledge of medicine. He served his government as advisor to the pharaoh, and he served the world with his genius, still evident in the step pyramid today. Dr. King told us, and I quote, "Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love." End quote. Whatever you do to serve, execute it with excellence and high standards. In other words, do it right or don't do it. Next, what are your goals? What goals would further our community? These questions are also critical as the answer should guide our plans of action. Generally speaking, as a community, we don't create goals for ourselves, especially in the long term. Work with yourself. Assess your health and do what you need to do. Look at your finances and do what you need to do. Think about and consider creating a 5-year plan. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Remember, the colonizer plans 10, 25, 50 years ahead and more. If we want to do more than survive, we must make plans to thrive and be serious about how we move in the world. To that end, we must begin to identify specific goals, personally and professionally, including education, economics, and politics, along with local, logical, strategic plans and concrete steps for success. Do you know what organizations support our forward progress? How can you support and be involved in them? There is strength in numbers. Taking the time to identify organizations and programs that already exist to collaborate with them is necessary. Of particular note are small grassroots organizations working within neighborhoods. They would greatly benefit from our resources, volunteer time, money, and expertise. In fact, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the adults who facilitate Ashe clubs. Ashe clubs is one answer to the challenge of miseducation. I regularly conduct Ashe facilitator training classes for this express purpose, knowing that if schools were going to do this critical work, it would already be done. Ashe clubs currently operate in Bermuda, Philadelphia, and Kumasi, Ghana. Facilitators are currently being trained for implementing Ashe clubs in Texas, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. St. Martin is also working on an Ashe club. The challenge of correcting mass miseducation is ours to do. 3 more pointed points to leave you with, beginning with realignment. We must realign our values and behavior with our consciousness. To realign our values is significant, especially where it concerns how we spend our time and hard-earned resources. Realigning our values means being mindful of what we consume, including what we eat, what we watch, what we read, what we listen to, and what activities we participate in. Realignment also means honestly assessing your lifestyle. To quote Baba Asa, and to make it personal, Are you an ignorant of our past, a stranger to our people, an ape of our oppressor, and a creature of habitual shallow thought and trivial values? Only you can answer that question. Only you can grow your consciousness and shift behavior accordingly. Some things, habits, people associations, and less than optimal actions must go. That includes rejecting what does not serve us, especially unbridled materialism, selfish individualism, and artificial nationalism that has us working against each other to the benefit of the colonizer. Be gentle with yourself and kind to others. All of us are suffering under the ravages of white supremacy and racism to one extent or another. We are not all in the same place in terms of our consciousness and desire to know. While a lot of the knowledge is enlightening and inspiring, some of it is heavy and devastating, requiring utmost sensitivity. Along the same line, as you share, be mindful to grow the seeds of consciousness and not become a source of irritation for folks who aren't ready. Everybody is not ready. It's okay. Share more with folks who are ready. They're ready to receive. Share it with them. And just a little bit for folks who aren't ready, priming their pump till they are ready. Finally, we must continue the work of resistance in word and deed. The act of resistance is a muscle that must be used and strengthened. We must learn to appropriately speak up to injustice and racism when we encounter it. Here, the Honorable Frederick Douglass said it best, and I quote, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters." This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle, end quote. It is worth noting once again that we are the ones we are waiting for. My good people, it has been an absolute honor to share my thoughts, insights, and knowledge during the past 3 years. I am deeply thankful for all of you and your receptivity, allowing me to share my knowledge, gifts, and talents. Asante Sana to all. So, continuing in the MDDK tradition, my concluding poem embodies the ultimate goal. That is, what does it mean to be one? The oneness of humanity, a lofty, sacred, and divine revelation requiring a reorienting, a shift, a radical new view of humanity by humans with insight and guidance from on high. What must we shift? First and foremost, the system of white supremacy, a system that perpetuates obscene disparities of wealth and poverty. The othering of people of color, a profound disrespect, dare I say arrogance, against the cultures, faiths, and very existence of a majority of the world's people. In order for the oneness of humanity to be more than a beautiful aspiration of the divine, concrete plans and actions towards fulfillment must be in place. The oneness of humanity requires not only study of God's sacred words, but also study of man's atrocities to man, actively cultivating understanding, empathy, and an agape love of all humanity. It is a tall order and a divine imperative. Oh God, give us what we need: strength, will, intention, determination, grace. Then order our steps. Ashe. I am Mwalimu Melody Masheri Van Putten, and I have been dropping the knowledge. Ashe.
Truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity. 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 Justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity. Truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity.